cacophony, just going all out, and then it just goes in, obey the call, and it ends. And I'm like, yes, that's a song I think is like a perfect example of what the album. I'm surprised they didn't drop that song first as a single. That easily could have been on a radio, dude. And so yeah, that one's like the one I like right now, but that can always change. Puppet Parade's cool. That could have easily been on a 90s album. I mean, Let There Be Shred. Like, I mean, every song for the most part has like a really cool section that, you know, when I play it, I get rewarded. You know, something cool coming up. But I think yeah, Obey the Call would be the one that it sounds the most unique, and you know, it feels like unique to this album. It's the one that I'm definitely gonna remember for sure. But yeah.
All right. So, what's your least favorite track if you had to choose one on this album?
Well, right off the bat, for sure, I Am War. That chorus is fucking kind of low. Like, when people talk about this album being cringe, that's the song they're gonna be using as an example. It is pretty cringe. I don't know why it's there. It sounds like something that could have been on Super Collider, you know, and you know, we could talk about that album later, but it's just I don't know what. I mean, shit, they should have saved that one for like a fucking Walmart bonus track or something, you know, in my opinion. But another one that surprisingly, like, I didn't like as much is The Last Note. I remember watching a lot of reviews talking about how like that's like one of the top songs, but I mean, I get it. It's really thematic, and you know, it's an autobiographical track, kind of in the same nature as like the songs of Mice and Men, 13. Trying to think of other albums. You know, that this one sort of kind of fits that kind of, you know, it's very, I mean, these are really honest songs, but I don't know, I don't like the last part of that song where like it just kind of ends, and then you have this like weird acoustic like outro, and it just feels out of place, and it's like kind of like it just felt like, hey, this is my last song. It's like, yes, it's your last song, bro. Like, you don't have to tell us it's your last song, you know. And but it was a little too cinematic for its own good. But I mean, that can change. It'll grow on me eventually. Yeah. But as of right now, like in this moment, yeah, I'm not super hot about it.
All right. So, what's your favorite Megadeth song, like, of all time? Any album?
Any album? Shit. Well, I think one that I think is like the best example of everything that they've ever done. That's like a deep cut, you know, ones that like I'm gonna listen to for the rest of my life for sure is Lucretia off Rust in Peace. I love that fucking groove. You know, watch any video of people reacting to it, they all gonna have the same reaction. They're gonna, you know, try. I mean, it's got a cool riff. The lyrics are a little weird, but you know, the last part where the guitar solos come in, Marty Friedman just soars like a freaking like a fucking eagle, whatever, albatross, whatever, like whatever. He's just soaring through like a jet. And then Dave comes in and he's cool, man. Like, I've never heard Dave more ice cold in my life with a guitar solo. So, but yeah, I would say like it makes you think of like driving a car, like driving down freaking the Autobahn with your sunglasses at night. If you ever want to feel cool, that's the song to play. Yeah, for sure. But I mean, there's other songs that I like. Obviously, like I mean, name me an album and I'll tell you my favorite song, you know, like, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I think that one for sure. I mean, I used to really like Looking Down the Cross off the first album. That one's I think that one's about the crucifixion of Christ. But I think contextually it's like him like going like I think it's him like not being so graceful, like going, he does the opposite of what he, you know, if that makes sense. He does like he doesn't do the good guy thing, you know. He goes and he says, you know, fuck everything. So at least that's how I think that the song was about. But I like that take on it. But you know, as time gone on, I think Lucretia is probably my most favorite. It's the one I'm gonna always probably go to for the most.
All right, so what's your opinion on the Ride the Lightning cover on this album?
I liked it a lot more than I was expecting it to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, obviously, like, I've had my reservations and kind of fears about, you know, hearing the song, but I'll say this: the first time I heard that, I was driving down the freeway. I was driving down to the Bay Area, and I remember, like, you know, when the bridge kicked in and the solos kicked, and I heard Dave play his solo in that song. I never felt more hyped in my life. I realized in that moment, you know, this, you know, call it a cover, call it, you know, a reimagination, reinterpretation. I mean, the truth of the matter is he wrote that song.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into the Megadeth Metallica feud because, I mean, it's been told, you know, it's nothing new.
Yeah.
And I wasn't there to see any of it. So, but, you know, seeing it from the outside in, and, you know, kind of with all things considered, you know, he wrote that. He had as much of writing credit, contribution to that song as James, Lars, and even Cliff, right? And it's one thing to remember is that song actually it credits all four of those guys. You know, Kurt's not part of that writing credit at all. He played on it, but he, as far as like the composition, you know, at one point all four of these guys were in that room. And call it the last song they ever wrote, but, you know, let's assume that is the last songs they ever wrote. The last song they ever wrote was that. And to think that chemistry was there, even during the turmoil that Metallica had with him, where they were still able to kind of come together and pop out this juggernaut of a song. And with that said, you know, assuming it's a cover, let's say, you know, who's the most qualified to even play it, and not than the guy who, you know, did a part in writing it. So, but with that said, it, you know, it's one of those instances where it feels like it didn't feel like a Metallica song. It felt like Megadeth. So I can't say it's a Megadeth song, but it when I heard it, they really took it into their own. Granted, it has its flaws. You know, the vocals aren't the best thing in the world, but they weren't as bad as I thought. You know, maybe after that first initial verse and into the chorus, that's when it starts to really mesh a little bit better. The funny thing is too is that when I went back to the Metallica version after hearing it, and something changed right away where, you know, for example, like a lot of people were giving the idea that Dave is trying to sound like James, which, you know, could be true. But now when I hear the Metallica one, I get the impression that I can't unhear it. To me, it sounds like James is trying to sound like Dave. Which is funny. I mean, you know, but that's just me, like, hearing it. But also, the last thing I wanted to conclude it with, before I forget, is I think the real question now is if, you know, granted they were recorded at two different periods. I'm sure if Megadeth recorded Ride the Lightning back then, that would have been a much different conversation.
Yeah.
But, you know, since we're now, I think the real question should be, or that people should be asking is, if Megadeth and Metallica both recorded Ride the Lightning in 2026, who would play it better?
Yeah.
You know, but my favorite thing about the Ride the Lightning cover, or this Ride the Lightning, is, dude, the drumming on this song is fucking killer, dude. Dirk blew my mind with how he played. Like, I go back to the Metallica one, the drumming is like, nah, it feels like pedals in comparison, which sucks, you know, because the original one has so much atmosphere, and, you know, obviously Kirk, in my opinion, Kirk did it the solo a little bit better, but when I hear Dave play it like this, I hear him. I don't hear Kirk, I hear Dave. So now when I hear the Metallica one, I'm hearing Kirk doing Dave. You know, and I can't unhear that, so I think the Ride the Lightning cover was a brilliant move. I think it worked. It got people talking, you know, it worked. Maybe, who knows, maybe that's why people bought the album, to hear it. But regardless, like, it fits in the theme. I'm kind of stoked that they did it. Although I do wish they did like not like a medley, but I kind of wish they did also write Call of Cthulhu. Because he also wrote that one as well.
Yeah.
I think what really would have been sicker too, had they done that, they should have called it When Hell Freezes Over, because that was the original title for that song when he was part of Metallica. So if they had dropped a song like When Hell Freezes Over, make that a bonus track or something, boom, I think that would have been a really cool addition to this packaging for sure.
Yeah, that would have been cool. So what did you think, or how did you feel when you saw that Megadeth achieved their first ever #1 album on the Billboard 200?
Fucking finally. Finally, man. I didn't think it was ever gonna happen. Because, you know, they've come close. I've seen them go to like 4, 3, 2, you know, but never 1.
Yeah.
And that's weird, you know. I don't know how these things kind of play out. You know, I've certainly never paid attention. Obviously the only other bands, metal bands that have, you know, done it in this nature, obviously Metallica. Just they do it every album. You just expect it, you know. But I'm sure they're not the only metal band to have achieved that. But you know, for Megadeth, like, not only did they debut, it's like, you know, as in like drop, you know, coming out as that right away #1, you know, they dethroned Morgan Wallen, which is really funny because when Countdown to Extinction came out, which was the closest they ever got to one, they got dethroned by, or they got stopped by Billy Ray Cyrus, like a country guy.
Okay.
So it's kind of ironic that all this time later, you know, they dethroned, you know, one of the biggest country guys out right now. So, I mean, you know, I can't be the only one who noticed that, but, you know, I think, you know, it's good. It's well deserved. You know, he worked really hard for it against all odds, against all adversaries, with nothing but, you know, vision and drive. You know, I find it really inspiring, actually, that he did that. You know, it really shows that, you know, your dreams are possible if, you know, if you really got to work at it, even if you have to work against, you know, I consider it like a true triumph. You know, obviously it's not my award, but I think, you know, he earned it for sure, you know. So it's kind of it feels like your favorite football team that sucks finally winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's your response to the criticisms of this album?
Ironic, because it went #1.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of the people who are gonna are not gonna like Megadeth aren't gonna like Megadeth, and the people who do like Megadeth are gonna like this album.
Yeah.
You know, anybody who wants to see a 60-year-old man do the same shit and then when he was 20 something is delusional, right? Anyone who who considers this to be like a dad rock band, you know, are gonna, you know, like, joke's gonna be on them later when they get older. You know, but all jokes aside, like, I've heard a lot of stuff. You know, I think what stuck to me more was seeing like former Megadeth members talk about it. I saw some clips of David Ellefson pretty much saying like, this isn't a Megadeth album. This sounds like a Dave Mustaine solo album. You know, my take on that whole thing is just like, dude, you weren't on it. Which is a whole other thing, actually, too. You know, I haven't been the biggest fan of the last 15 years of Megadeth. And I say that because he was actually part of the band during that period. David Ellefson came back in 2010, post Endgame. And, dude, those albums they're not, like, terrible, but, like, compared to what I was used to, they sucked. And, you know, when even The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead, like, even though he wasn't technically on it, he did, like, write a lot of those songs. They're cool, but it's just, like, I felt like the band wasn't really, like, going anywhere. It just kind of, like, it was kind of stuck in second gear most of the time, you know. And when they were sort of trying to propel their band, like, in a faster level, like, or, you know, they try to, like, speed things up, it just kind of felt, like, forced. You know, and honestly, like, I don't, you know, when I hear people having criticisms, it's just more like, are they, you know, they're obviously not following the band album to album to album. They probably have their favorite songs, like, you know, Countdown, and, you know, if you're comparing it to like that, nothing's gonna match up to it. But at the same time, you're only like, you know, those albums are only becoming more and more dated. You have to kind of modernize.